So welcome to the Node.js Technical Steering Committee meeting for June 18th, 2025. We'll follow our standard agenda of going through the issue, which was issue number 1749 in the repo. Before we dive into the agenda, does anybody have any announcements they'd like to share? Okay, if not, then I'm going to go into the reminder. So reminder to nominate people for the contributor spotlight. We are trying to ramp that back up. Haven't heard an update on how many nominations we have yet, but it would be a good time to do that. In terms of CPC and board meeting updates, Matteo, do you have anything we should discuss this week?
Nothing for the public section, maybe something for private.
Sounds good. Okay, so on to the next one then, which would be Node.js Node. Says remove symbol dispose integration and set timeout and set interval. If anybody's been involved in that discussion, please jump in.
So that discussion stems from me meeting Luca Casonato in Amsterdam last week. And I did a talk. I talked about the new using feature and how we were adding it to Node. And I demoed the timer thing. And Luca Casonato screamed almost during the discussion, because as you all are aware, our implementation of timers is not the same thing that is done on the web, and which is a problem. Okay, and as that becomes more common, this is an area where other runtimes cannot implement correctly. Okay? And so if that patterns become diffused, that will be problematic for compatibility. Also, it's problematic for compatibility, for isomorphic compatibility overall. So not just that, but if you want to send code to run on the front end too. Okay, so it might not be a good idea to ship that. That's the TLDR of that discussion.
I think for me, the more interesting part would be compatibility with the web versus other runtimes, because I guess I don't understand why they couldn't implement it if they chose to. But the part about browsers, I don't know if that's I guess there's a standard and that standard doesn't say using it, right?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
I was just saying, I think for me, at least, the part about not being compatible with the web part, that, I think there's a standard and they're not likely to change that. The fact that other runtimes could potentially implement the same thing as Node if they wanted to, or maybe there's some reason, but I don't understand off the top of my head why not. So the key issue that I'm interested that I hear or feel is the compatibility with the website part.
Yes, exactly. That's that is that.
And I guess do you have a good insight how that interplays? Is that basically any use or leverage of using is going to be something that doesn't not they're never going to do that in the browsers? Or is it
No,
they haven't
no,
in the past?
No, it's impossible, because for legacy reason, set timeout in the browser by the spec, what spec and so on, returns a number. So there's not an object. So you can't do that at all.
So,
it's never going to happen.
but that's if we're returning a number, then that's the same. If we're not returning a number, then it's different anyway, right?
It's different anyway. Yes, it's different, but it's the format usually is the same. So you do your set timeout, then you do clear timeout, and you pass the clear timeout, the output of set timeout to clear timeout in both cases. So normal usage is completely transparent. Okay, things got problematic with ref and non-ref. And in order to have Node.js specific compatibility, we have process.ref, process.unref that were added a long time ago by James. so that essentially, one could do node.js specific thingy there, even if they wanted to support that kind of pattern. But these complicate things further. So again, it's about web platform compatibility. Okay, I have no problem in having those in what is returned by Node.js node timers. Okay, but the global ones, for the global ones, it is problematic. Hopefully, it makes sense. I don't have much more to add, to be honest.
I see Richard has his hand up.
So the only thing I'll point out is I think someone mentioned that we shouldn't ship this. We have already shipped this in node 24.20.
Yeah, so I know.
It's already gone out. So this is now a question of like removing it, stopping it going back, being backported, all that kind of stuff.
Well, it's yes, exactly. Well, it can't be backported because it does not exist. So technically, that become usable only very late in the 24 cycle.
I think the situation is more nuanced than that because the symbol dispose support has been shipped since 18. It's the using syntax that's only been shipped in 24. So if people are using the symbol dispose, if they have some sort of polyfill, that will already be working since 18.
So basically, I think, Joey, if I understand you correctly, like if somebody was going to write code that was not web compatible, that was already the case. And the only change now is that it's been updated to use the new using functionality and make it better.
Right? I think the idea is that if we want to remove it, we need to go through full deprecation cycle because it has been out there for too long.
Yeah.
I honestly think that it's not very practical to think that we can change the return type of set timeout. Maybe we can just roll out a web timers API, just like we have for web crypto and web streams, and we can support both.
Even that might be complicated though. I mean, we can add it as a new API. That will absolutely work. I agree. But everything existing, people would still anticipate being a compatible API.
I mean, if anyone uses like transpile code that relies on that does use it and relies on this, that would already be existing code that kind of have been doing this, but we don't know how widespread this is.
I believe there is also another option of feature flagging this. So if you pass an option, set timeout would return a different type.
This should, sorry, Darshan, there are two things, okay? One is the fact it's generic compatibility, web compatibility, okay? That is not happen. Like, I don't think we will ever be able to shift it back, okay? To be honest, I generically don't think it's possible. But there is also making the thing worse in that regard. Okay, we already have ref and .ref and .unref, and those are super popular everywhere. So I don't think we will ever like I don't know, if we wanted to duplicate those, it will be a new buffer campaign, okay, that will take years to ship. And look, I don't think we should be embarking ourselves in that journey, to be honest. Unless, I don't know, we have is something that one of those runtime want to sponsor heavily in terms of, shifting the ecosystem. Which, by the way, I agree with. In theory, we should be doing it. It's just, I think, impractical to ask any volunteer to do that work. Apart from that, I don't think it's practical, but it is using this symbol dispose is probably could worsen the situation because it's yet another difference that people will need to take care of, essentially. So that's the rationale. Okay, to be honest, it's something that we need to discuss. So I asked Luca to open that discussion because I think it's worthwhile to discuss with everybody. Okay, if we want to have even Luca come in presenting that discussion thing, that point, I think it might be worthwhile. Okay, to have that conversation because it's the biggest difference between Node and the web, and maybe we need to do something.
But as you already said, like it's pretty much impractical to ever change the return type. And if that's the case, well, does it really hurt? Like we will have different implementation, no way around it. And now the question is, we can add a fully aligned API as separate thing where we say it's a web API. That is possible. If someone wants to use it, they can. And otherwise, they would use that. It should probably, the name ambiguity would be difficult in this case. Because when you read set timeout, for example.
You can't ship that because for the web, it's attached to the global and people use set timeout from the global.
That's correct, yeah.
So you can't essentially do that.
Yeah, it would be more of like an extra that you explicitly require as a compatibility layer to know you're now compliant, which is also weird because now you have the explicit node require in it. It's like, yeah.
Yeah.
So like, I guess we're not likely to get to a decision today. Is it to jump back in the issue to discuss further, or is what do you think
I think
the
so.
next step that we should do for today is?
I think we could potentially think of inviting Luca and maybe discussing with him the topic. I think it's probably worthwhile to have this discussion.
Let's have it, even though I don't believe we will probably change much. I believe the outcome is we accept and that we have different APIs.
Yeah, might be that might be the outcome. I have no problem with the outcome. Just
Do you have her hand up?
I wonder whether we should, instead of thinking about how to revert the existing, I guess, damage done, we should think about how we can prevent this from happening again. Like, the next time someone tries to add some, we have some kind of people we can ping about this, like whether this is going to introduce further, instead of, doing postmortem about this.
Yeah, and a general, we could document somewhere that our consensus is that we will not add things that take us away from the spec, right? Or that would be a valuable thing to have an agreement and written down, so you could, the people who are objecting to an issue could say, well, here, I'm going to point you to, we've agreed we're not going to do this kind of thing. I'm willing to volunteer to do like a first pass at something for our collaborator, like in our collaborator documentation. Like, I don't know if we already have a web compatibility section, but like, I think something that just says like, our goal is to be web compatible when possible, and like, therefore we won't accept changes which take us away from the web compatibility in general, right? Like, there might be some special cases, but if we think that's useful, I can volunteer to PR something in for that.
Yeah, I think it might be useful to have a document, and then I don't know exactly how this can be implemented, but like have some. Oh, I guess like maybe there's a globals then, as far as I can tell. Like if someone is trying to update globals, the bot would just ping a thing that kind of knows like that how to review and catch these kind of gotchas before things get landed.
I
Matteo, go ahead.
I think we could even put some comments in line in the code, literally, like referring to the docs. Please read this document when touching the reviewing on touching the globals, so that you know that you need to don't add new methods to the timer class. Okay, like putting even some stuff in line says do not add new methods to this class because that will be public and will deviate further from the spec.
Yeah, that would, I think, be very helpful if there's like a specific list of things, like here's the doc, so read, you're updating this, make sure you've read this, but also then it could be even more specific, like don't add methods to blah, blah, and blah if we've got a list there.
Yep.
Okay, so I think we wanted to keep about a half an hour, so I think we should move on this one, but like if people can continue to discuss, and I can volunteer to put together a doc where we can have some discussion, and the bot sounds like a good idea too. And we'll leave on the agenda as a reminder to make sure we do something. The next one is update NPM v11 to Node.js 22. Again, if anybody's been active in that one, if you want to jump in. I see, Matteo, you opened it.
Yeah. Well, fundamentally, it's the usual question. We need to come to so we need to come to a decision. Part of the problem here is Node.js NPM does not have an LTS policy. You know this, right? Very known fact. And basically, we do a long running maintenance mode essentially with them after they ship a new major. There is this version of NPM that fixes some very, very odd bugs and add a lot of safety measures. Frankly, there has been probably only one really, like I think the latest one that they did it's okay. There was a regression on Windows that was fixed, I think. And frankly, I think we should be landing this, to be honest, because otherwise, like Node 22 has really a long lib, and I prefer to update it to NPM 11 or before that goes in maintain.
What would be the main breaking? Like, I can see there's some discussion in the issue. Is there some
warnings?
People, so mostly there'll be some new warnings.
Yes.
Joey has her hand up.
Can people just update NPM independently? Like, just not use the bundle version if they're affected?
They can, but it's impractical.
Does
Like
that
most users will never do that.
Does that also mean if they get broken, it will also be impractical for them to downgrade?
I believe very few users would actually like face these issues, and they could downgrade.
So I guess it comes down to whether we think not rolling the upgrade is going to break more people than it is when we roll the upgrade. Correct? And the feeling in the room is that it will break more people if we don't roll the upgrade.
Richard, you're next, or should
Richard, next. Sorry.
Yeah, it's not just warnings. There is a very small, well, I say small. There is an unknown breaking change, which is one of the lifecycle scripts doesn't get run now. It's like one of the pre or post to one of the lifecycle events. It may not in practice be an issue, but it is a breaking change. So it's not just warnings. There are some breaking changes, but that may be evaluated to, maybe we feel that that's the balance is better to upgrade regardless of that. But it is more than just, oh, you'll get a few annoying warnings. There are some changes in there that will be observable if you happen to be already using some. It won't be everyone. It will be some unknown proportion using those scripts.
Matteo had his hand up next.
The like node, like I think it's also about the future. Okay, it's the fact that Node 22 has still more or less a couple of years of lifetime, and it's not. I think it will make our life easier to move it to 11 now than moving to 11. I don't know, next year if we were forced to do it for whatever reason. So, yeah. Ruben?
Yeah, I mean, and we also don't know about security issues being potentially in the future, like in an older release line, and only fixed on a newer release line. So we were definitely facing this issue before, where we were backporting majors because of that. And I believe it is better to break the users early on in this case, and then later, actually. And like the even if the life cycle is an issue, then we can, I don't believe it would be a major breaking change, but we can run Sigim as we do with any other breaking change detection, and then see how it goes.
What is the opinion of the MPN team on this? I suppose they probably know like the balance between which one is going to break more people. Because I think from the issues I cannot really tell what's their recommendation.
Maybe that's like, it's good to ask that specific question of them. Raphael has his hand up.
Yeah, so my suggestion is in terms of security, if security is a concern, I believe that we could wait if if they release a CVE for Node.js for NPM version 10, then we can issue a security release including the upgrade of NPM as part of this Node.js security release. So we do that. And it's very, very common that we issue breaking changes in several minor security releases when we identify those vulnerabilities. And my secondary recommendation is that leave that NPM version on Node.js 24 for a while until people upgrade and see some other now breaking changes that it might arise. And then we could consider backporting it to 22. I mean, I feel that backporting it now might cause more burden than it is now.
Okay, I think I'll suggest, since we wanted to keep some time, that we move on to the next issue. I guess let's continue the discussion in the issue there. It doesn't sound like we have full consensus on like whether we should do it or not. And I'll leave it on the agenda. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. The next one is revert 56664. We have discussed that in the past. Just seeing if there's, and I think we commented that like the TSC members, when we discussed it, there was no objection to revert it. And I see a comment that was asking specifically if we need to revert all three. So like, I don't think there's necessarily anything more for us to discuss this week. Unless anybody has any, things they want to bring up on it. Okay, and given we wanted to keep some time for the private section, I would suggest we skip the add blog post publishing guidelines and let's talk about the CI situation to next time. I think Matteo, you probably added the first one, so if you're okay with that, or think we should.
I can talk in 3 minutes. Okay, this is
Okay.
that change is to align with the marketing discussion. So it's that was being having with the foundation. So also because it also matches more or less, I think, best practices regarding times of publishing things, and therefore things are not being published randomly on the blog. Okay, like typically when you do an announcement or something is tied to be published on a given time and place, on a given time, and so on and so forth. So anyhow, it states that publishing blog posts is a joint responsibility and so on and so forth. Please review it. Okay, it's more for visibility than
Okay.
anything else.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll say on agenda. Okay, so we'll say it's on the agenda for an FYI to the TSC members. We can leave it at that till we move to the private section, and then it's okay. Skipped for this week. So at this point, I'll say, unless we have any things people feel we should talk about before we go into the private section, we'll do that now. Okay, at this point, then I will say